Our speaker today is Reverend Laura Jackson Liu, speaker, author, coach, consultant, and musician. She's a nationally recognized speaker on Earth Changes. She's passionate about humanity and the exciting opportunities in this powerful time in which we live. Connecting pieces of the puzzle, from metaphysics to quantum physics, she reveals the deeper meaning of our times and how others can learn to move through them. Whether speaking to audiences or performing flute music, Laura shares a powerful message. We are all connected, and our entire way of being is shifting radically and beautifully as we enter a new era. Laura is a national speaker, including lectures, workshops, national conferences, special events, and radio and television. She's a Reiki master, a oneness blessing giver, and a priest of the Order of Melchizedek. So please welcome Reverend Laura Jackson Liu.
So nice to be here. Thank you. And today, I would love to talk about leading from within. Right? And here we have the fellowship, right? And that inner light that is inside. So we're going to talk about all those things today. And so what does this bring to mind when you hear that, leading from within? You might be thinking, I'm not a leader. I hope you feel differently at the end of today. So I'd like to share a personal experience with you today, and then 3 ways in which you can kind of tap in and lead from within. I mean, truthfully, I could probably keep you here through tomorrow morning to talk about all those characteristics and traits, but just going to focus on 3 today. So leading from within, you also might think that this is inspired by current world events, and it wasn't. And while some of you know that I've been a subject matter expert speaking on topics here for a number of years, I actually moved to Virginia Beach in 2008 to work with nonprofits and non-governmental organizations. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today. So last month, I had an amazing experience. It was kind of the intersection of many areas of my life. In July, just last month, I had the privilege to participate in a United Nations conference in Vienna, Austria. Now, as a lifelong musician, it was wonderful to be in Vienna because it's also known as the city of music, right? Yes. And you have Mozart, Strauss, Beethoven, a lot of composers, a lot of artists and creatives who spent time in Vienna. So lots of famous coffee houses where you can go in and you can stay however long you want. You don't have to just have your coffee or tea and run. And there were synchronicities. There was wonderful food, healthy food, and beautiful sights and palaces and museums. And then meeting 2 strangers at a dinner one night who became new friends, who then felt like lifelong friends, with an invitation to visit them in India that was very clear, very heart-connected, right? So how do these things happen? You can't, they're just, well, the synchronicities, and we'll talk about that. And so how did I get there? Because the purpose of this trip was to participate in a United Nations conference. So I was actually attending as an intern. Imagine that at my age. So, and it was, as I said, a long string of synchronicities that got me to that point. That's probably a whole nother talk. So I have been in the nonprofit world for more than 30 years. And I used to be terrified of public speaking. I grew up playing the flute and maybe hiding behind my flute. And I began to speak, doing advocacy for arts and for music. That's where it began, a long time ago. And I have always wanted to work with NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, and you have many connected to the United Nations. So over the past 6 months, I participated in and received a certificate for attending an NGO advocacy program. Never seen anything like it. And again, how I arrived there was, we can't make these things happen, right? So this United Nations conference in Vienna, Austria, Austria was perfectly timed at the end of this 6-month internship. And I felt so fortunate and blessed to be able to attend in person and not just online. So with mostly NGOs there and some member states present, including the United States, who I met one of their representatives who lives here in Norfolk, Virginia. Again, how is that possible, right? So there came a point in the proceedings where I felt like I was called to speak. Now let me be really transparent here. All the other interns and myself from countries all over the world in this program were really guided to not speak this first time, right? Except maybe in a rare instance where we had information that would actually be helpful, because all this was going on the record. Our first experience was really about observing and learning. Now, this makes sense after 6 months of this intensive study because it's a whole nother world there. It's languaging, it's procedure, it's strategy, it's dynamics, and a myriad of other factors. I mean, if you walked in cold, like to understand what's happening, it's really different. And so, yes, I spoke briefly at the United Nations, and there's 3 important pieces here. One, I was invited to the table, and I talk about this in business, invite your talent to the table, right? The second was, my voice mattered. And the third was, I was heard and received. Isn't that what we all want, right? And so the message is, this was a really cool experience, but you don't have to speak at the United Nations to be a leader, okay? That's part of the message today. Leadership is in your being, not all in your doing, okay? It's not about your title or role, not about any of that. So it's about making a positive difference, whether it is around the world or in your own backyard. Now, participating in this conference was really a dream realized. It's a path to contributing in new ways that go far beyond simply speaking on the record. Because real change and real leadership is the long game. Real change occurs when you listen to others first and ask, how may I serve? And real change is where the rubber meets the road, not in the limelight. This is real leadership, and this is the beginning of how do we lead from within. And so, as I shared earlier, there are a lot of traditional leadership traits. And today, I'm just going to share 3 that I believe are really centered around how do we lead from within. And so first is you listen first. That's it. It's being fully present. Now, maybe I'm the only one in this room that's like going in a few directions all at the same time often, right? No, I'm not. Okay, great. And so to really slow down and tune in, we have it right here, your inner light. Going within and being fully present and listening to your innermost guidance. What feels right? Leading from within is leading from the body, mind, and spirit. It's all of us, not just our brain. Our brain is great, but it only goes so far. You all know that. You all are good stewards here. That is not new information, right? So listening first, it's being positive, encouraging, and enlightening. And so if you go within and you believe that you hear anything less than positive, that's not your inner guidance, right? Your inner guidance doesn't judge. It's not negative. Those are the workings of the egoic mind and the monkey mind, as they call it. That's not your innermost guidance, really connecting to your heart and to all that is. And so instead of looking for answers outside of yourself, you go within first. And the more you practice deep listening, the clearer you will get. So that's the first, is listening. The second is, how may I serve? And it, again, begins with listening, but a lot of times it's outside of you. It's listening with the intention to truly hear others. and wondering how you can serve them first. It's being real. You hear all these terms, authentic and transparent. It's just being natural. I mean, there's only one of you. I know we have billions of people on the planet. There's no one here exactly like you. Why would you want to be like someone else when you can be like yourself? Because you're bringing something tremendously special, especially at this time in the world. Leading by serving is being compassionate. Leading by serving is being empathetic. And so sometimes listening can even be enough because it allows people to be seen, be heard, and be valued. And it's part of what I shared earlier. There is great transformation that can happen in just that you don't have to go figure out what you need to say or what advice you need to give. If you do have ideas and resources physically to share, that's great. But if not, you could offer other possibilities. So I'm going to say this one, Macy's and Gimbals. How many of you know what I'm talking about there, right? Miracle on 34th Street. He sent them to Gimbals. Did that, first woman say, I'm going to go shop at Gimbals forever? It was going to get her one thing she was looking for, but she's going to come back to Macy's because he was honest and open and built trust and built confidence, and because he cared about really helping that person. This is kind of maybe a little rare in our world, but this is what we get to bring. This is what we get to bring by tuning into our inner leadership and our inner wisdom. And so here's a big one too in leadership. It means recognizing that you don't have to have all the answers. I mean, we know sometimes when somebody's sharing with us, we're like, oh, I really want to help them, and what's the answer? Or if you're in a real leadership role, right? And that's kind of revolutionary from traditional leadership. We have to have all the answers. We have to figure it out ourselves and help everybody. It's not like that anymore. That's not leading from within. So we have listening and serving. And then the third one is, how can you inspire others? I don't mean with a speech, but how many people could simply use a little bit of inspiration and hope? You think just a few? You think everyone? Everyone, right? Especially in these interesting days in which we live. So maybe inspiring is simply to acknowledge their amazingness, no matter what is happening, no matter what they are going through. It's offering encouraging and kind words. It's being proactive and kind. And so what more could you tap into by hearing and feeling that could uplift and inspire others from a very simple act of at the grocery store, of a very simple act of, wherever you stop, really being fully present and giving someone your full presence. So leading and inspiring means trusting your own potential as well, because that's one of the things where most people aren't fully tapped into all their potential. And so when you inspire them, you can also guide them to that may happen as well, accessing more potential and more possibilities. And inspiring others means you have nothing to prove. Simply showing up, being fully present, listening, and serving. And it's the embodiment of authentic, conscious, intentional, inspired, and transformational leadership. It is all of those things, but you are starting from within, the true place of where that begins. Listening, serving, and inspiring. And so maybe you've searched for guidance outside of yourself. Maybe you've been disappointed in what you thought was a model of leadership. It's certainly understandable, given all of what we're seeing today. I know I have, and even recently, from yet another program that I invested in. And it wasn't what I thought, and the leader wasn't who I thought. And so how is it that early in my life, I so wished I had a mentor, that I could have avoided so many stumbling blocks and pitfalls, and only to be brought back around to this. And when I heard a long time ago, stop looking outside yourself and look within. And you know what? It comes back around. We get these beautiful reminders, don't we? So now in life, as an executive mentor and a life transformed certified coach, I'm able to provide new perspectives and possibilities to others, being of service and being a guide. And it's about them going inward. But that's one of the ways in which I get to serve. So what if you turned within? What would that feel like? What would that look like if you went within more often? The change begins with you. The possibilities begin with you. And the inspiration begins with you. You are the inspiration that can ignite and unite others. So what would happen if you stopped waiting on others to make a difference? And what if you are that difference? I learned the term in more recent years of armchair activist. And sometimes it's easy to stand by the sidelines, kind of think you see everything clearly, have opinions. But the question is, are you willing to choose to get in the game yourself? Or are you going to stay in the sidelines? And getting in the game doesn't mean that you have to go for the gold medal like we're watching with the Summer Olympics in Paris. It's about serving. That's getting in the game. Leading from within is when you are so driven to serve with no self-interest, selfless, when you feel a calling so strongly that you can't help but act. Here's a quote: "For courage, not complacency, is our need today. Leadership, not salesmanship. And the only valid test of leadership is the ability to lead and lead vigorously." That was John F. Kennedy in his presidential nomination acceptance speech in July of 1960. And we're all familiar with one of his other quotes: "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country," challenged every American to contribute in some way to public good. Here's the thing: public good doesn't have to be something grand. Public good can simply be lending your ear. It can be holding the door for someone. That's leading from within and listening. So leading from within takes courage, not complacency. And it transcends personal ego and chooses the good of all. To embody it, to live it, and to be it. And being happening at the smallest level can reap some of the greatest rewards. But it necessitates getting out of the chair, off the couch, out of your bubble. And it doesn't ask what you can do for me. You ask first, what can I do for you? So listen within, choose to serve first, and then invite, allow, and be the inspiration. Lead from within and be the leader that we want to see in the world today. Thank you.